Alrighty, so today we are going to start Ideology Week. So, for Ideology Week, what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of the major ideologies that are relevant today, and the 20th century as well, right? And from there, we're going to learn a lot about what's going on with those ideologies, what their motivations might be, and um, and then I'm going to share with you my ideology because hey, that's a good place to get things going, and pretty much this whole week is going to have a theme, and that theme is the motivation of why people believe these ideologies at all. And the motivation comes in two parts. The first part is that people are afraid. They're afraid of something, they're afraid of losing something or something bad happening to them, and because of that fear, they are motivated to do something about it, right? Which that's what fear is about. It's to motivate you to do something, fight or flight, right? Just handle the situation so you can be safe as natural human impulse. But what's interesting about with ideologies is that fear pushes you so hard towards a particular solution that your desire for what you believe will conquer your fear ends up giving you exactly what you feared in the first place. And that's the theme we're going to go throughout this whole week. And we're going to go through, the big three ideologies: fascism, socialism, liberalism, and then the one that is with America today, which is neoliberalism. And we'll go into those later in the week, and that'll be great. And then I'll share with you my ideology and why I believe it is better than all of those. And we'll dive into that when the time comes. But first thing you need to know about me, if you haven't watched any of my videos before, this is the whole theme of the channel, that everything is connected. And for me, that particularly means that God created everything. I'm a Christian, and so the best place to start in explaining these ideas is to show that these ideas are not merely something I just came up with, right? They are precisely a pattern that happens throughout history, precisely because this is something that is innate to the human nature, because God created all of us in his image, but that image has been a little bit corrupted by our desires. And this is exactly the same pattern that happens time and time again. And hopefully, as we go through this pattern, you can see it and course correct, so that way you don't suffer the same issues, even if you don't end up agreeing with me by the end of the week. So, today we're going to read from 1 Samuel 8. And to give you the backstory here of what's going on, Samuel is the last judge of Israel. A judge is essentially, back in that time, Israel didn't have any government, practically none. What they had was a judicial system, and that was it. There was no legislator, no laws, no hard laws of, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that. It was more a common morality that they shared. And they said, well, because we're Jewish, we should do these things. And if you're not doing those things, then people have the right to complain about it. And pretty much what the judges would do is they would travel around the country, and they would say, "Hey, I'm going to set up court. Tell me your problems. Tell me your the issues that people have with each other, and then we'll fix it. We'll sort it out. We'll say, hey, you did this, you did that. Here's how you reconcile, and then go on and keep doing what you're doing, or even better than that, do better, right?" And so at this point, the judge system has been working pretty well for a long time, and the Jews are pretty happy with it, but not entirely. It's okay, but the real issue with them is they're fine with the judgeship in terms of how they work and operate in their daily lives, but they have a fear. And that fear is all of their neighboring countries. And their neighboring countries, they don't have judges. No. They don't have this equitable system. They have kings. And those kings have armies. And those armies are threatening constantly to tear Israel down. So that's the stage we're setting. And Samuel is the last judge because his sons are not good judges. They take bribes. They don't care too much about justice. And so all the people are like, hey, we like you, but you're old. And so we're not gonna trust your sons to be just like you are. And so here's the plan. We want a king. And Samuel talks to God and is like, hey, they want a king. And God's like, yeah, that's a bad idea. And then this is what God tells Samuel to say in terms of why this is a bad idea. And this speaks directly to my point that their fear of being conquered is exactly what's going to push them towards this desire of a king, and this desire for a king is exactly what will lead them to being conquered. Because listen to this. 1 Samuel 8:10. Samuel delivered the message of the Lord in full to those who were asking him for a king. He told them, "The governance of the king who will rule you will be as follows. He will take your sons and assign them to his chariots and horses, and they will run before his chariots." So right there, he will enlist them into the army without you having a say-so, without you being able to do anything about it. And he will run in front of your chariot. They will run in front of his chariot. Well, the funny thing about that is the phrasing kind of makes it sound like they're actually running as the horses, pulling his chariot along. But that's obviously not what he means. I just think it's funny to envision it like that. What they mean is obviously the king is going to sit all the way back and let your kids do all the fighting and all the dying. And he'll be perfectly safe. In other words, all of your families are his meat shield, right? They are just cannon fodder, before cannons. And they're going to die and be killed. And hopefully you win the battle. But if you don't worry. The king will be fine. He won't have a scratch. That's the kind of leader they're asking for. And that's the first bullet point. Then next it says this, 8:12. He will appoint from among them his commanders of thousands and hundreds. He will make them do his plowing and harvesting and produce his weapons of war and chariotry. So, pretty much, he's going to make all of them work for him. And here's the thing. When someone tells you exactly what you're allowed to work on and how you should do it, and you don't reap the benefits of it, that sounds a lot like slavery, doesn't it? Because they're not making these chariots, these weapons for themselves. They're making them for the army. And even with the food, well, that food isn't for you and your family. It's for the army. It's for the king. It's for the king and his table. So, what's the difference between you and a slave at this point? So, this is describing how the king will take away your freedom. All right. Next, 8:13. He will use your daughters as perfumers, cooks, and bakers. Which I kind of think is a little bit funny considering the world we're in now. That the Bible's pretty much saying the worst case scenario, the absolute terrible thing that's going to happen if you have a king, is that they're going to make your daughters work. And that sounds pretty weird to some people, I bet, where it's like, but I want to be a baker. Like, that sounds like a good job. That sounds like fun. But there's a big difference here between you choosing to do something because it's fun, exciting, and fulfilling, and you having to do something because people are making you. Because it's expected of you. And this is precisely, and this is a topic for a completely another day, but the issue with women working is not that they can work. It's that they have to work. It's that if they don't work, then them, even if they're married, then they probably aren't going to make enough to feed themselves and put food on their table. And you see, that's the evil thing here. It's not that women are working. It's that they have to work. They don't get a choice. Yeah, they get to choose perfumer, cook, or baker. Awesome. What a diversity in career paths. No. They want to be stay-at-home mom? Well, that's fine as long as the king says it's fine. All right. And then 8:14. He will take your best fields, vineyards, and olive groves and give them to his servants. So, we all know what that is. That's straight up taxes, right? He's gonna take from you, and that's it. You don't get a say. He's just gonna take it. And there's some more stuff. 8:18. This is where he's done listing the negatives, and this is what he says. On that day, you will cry out because of the king whom you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you on that day. And so it follows. The people, however, refused to listen to Samuel's warning and said, "No, there must be a king over us. We too must be like all the nations, with a king to rule us, lead us in warfare, and fight our battles." And that's it. Because they were afraid. They wanted a king. And because they wanted a king, they got exactly what they feared. Because what is so bad about being conquered, right? Well, you know, it is back in the day, so to be fair, they could have all been killed, right? But probably not all of them, right? The more likely scenario is when one nation conquered another at that time, they would all become slaves. They would become a slave class, and they wouldn't have freedom. So what did they give up in order to get that security so that way they wouldn't be slaves? Well, they gave up their ability to say no. They gave up their ability to work for themselves. They gave up the freedom of choice for the women. And they gave up their stuff. So when someone takes your stuff, makes you work for them, and makes your wives work for him, and doesn't and enlists you in the army whether you want to be or not, and has you die for them whether you want to or not. Well, at this point, what's the difference between the king and being conquered? And that's my point. Is these people were so afraid of being conquered that they exactly gave up all the things worth keeping. All the things that they had that most people at that time didn't. They gave up all of the things that were good in their life precisely so they could protect all of the good things that were in their life. They were so afraid to lose everything that they gave up everything. And you see, this is the pattern. You fear something. That fear leads you to a solution. And that solution ensures your fears come true. Because now, they don't have to wait for an opposing army to conquer them. They're already conquered by their own volition. They were afraid of a tyrant ruling over them, and so they created a tyrant of their own to rule over them. That's what they did. And it's funny, the story goes on, and it shows this playing out, where Saul is the first king of Israel, and yeah, he wins some wars. He wins some battles, and that's great. But he also becomes very tyrannical, where he starts, taxing people, running them into the ground, saying time after time, hey, we're going to go get the enemy. We're going to go get them. And he just gathers a whole bunch of people and gets them. And he becomes so unreasonable that at one point, his son is actually, great guy, just knocks out a whole army pretty much by himself, and it's like, oh man, this guy saved the day, right? But then because he didn't follow a simple arbitrary rule, Saul's totally ready to just kill him. And he says, I know you're a hero, I know you're my son, but you didn't listen to my arbitrary rule about not eating until we win. And so, you're gonna be dead. And if it wasn't for all of the other people around, he would have done it. But you see, this is the thing. That's the exact solution to tyranny. It's to say no. And that's what the people of Israel did that day. Is they said no to their king. Their king said something and said, hey, we need to do this. And all of the people said, no. No way we're doing that. How is it that we care about your son more than you do? But that's what power does to people. And so, that's the lesson here. When you have a fear, and you want to solve that fear, to make that fear go away, oftentimes you end up ensuring the exact fear that you were trying to prevent from happening. You make your nightmare a reality. And as we go through this week, I think that you'll find this is not unique to monarchies. This is something that stretches across all ideologies at all periods of time. That everyone falls into the same trap. They just maybe have different fears.